Welcome, guys. So I'm here with the guys from Treety, and we're going to discuss about how you guys came to have your purpose-driven organization, and what it means to have a purpose-driven organization. So, maybe you could just shortly introduce yourselves, and we take it from there.
Cool. So to begin with, thank you for having us. Glad that we can do this together. So my name is Hatim. I'm one half of the co-founders of Treety along with Mike. And in terms of my own story, I guess it's quite long, So the real short version is that I moved back to the Netherlands in 2019, at that point with a different business. Met Mike almost a year since that point, where I was trying to figure out how to kind of really establish myself in the Netherlands and establish that business in the Netherlands. Mike and I started working together, initially him being a freelancer, and then a few months later we decided that we want to do a real business together. And that's how Treety was born, and that's how we became co-founders. And I guess Mike maybe would like to share a bit of what he was doing before he met me.
So Mike, the other co-founder of Treety, I have a background in marketing technology, so worked for a couple of different startups in that space, 7-8 years, and before that actually a career in hospitality, which is feels like another life by now. A mutual friend of ours actually introduced us about half a year ago. I just came out of a sabbatical, and I essentially, after 15 job interviews and a couple of job offers, I decided I want to start for myself, and I started advising startups with their kind of marketing and sales strategy. And we were at an event, and a mutual friend of ours actually introduced us at the SaaStock Amsterdam. Shout out to Gernot Schwentner from WeGrow.
Thank you, Gernot.
Thank you, Gernot, once again. Which is funny because Gernot's business also, and his business and the way he met his partner was actually through me and working for Plot Projects my last job. So kind of a funny coincidence. He redid the favor.
Each other's cupids.
Yeah, exactly.
What goes around comes around.
What goes around comes around.
Yeah.
And so actually our collaboration started me as essentially advising Hatim's old company on sales and marketing, and we after a month or so of working together, we realized that it's a good collaboration. We were making decisions fast and kind of moving forward fast. Yes. And then very quickly Hatim asked me to join the company, and that's where the kind of conversation started about what's the vision for this company, what impact do we want to make on the world, and all that stuff. And at the same time, COVID came and slapped us all across the face with the backhand, which actually, in one way it was kind of, for everyone, I think it was shocking, and including our clients and our prospects, and everything just kind of froze. But that did give us kind of the opportunity to just pause, sit down at the table, and figure out, what if we ended up building a company together, what would that look like? What would be our purpose? What is our vision? What do we feel like the world needs? And we just basically took a month or so to figure that out, and
nice.
So Treety was born.
And I think it's a function of two things. One is I have to give credit to Mike.
The other is I have to give credit to me.
No, I have to give credit to the context, So like Mike, I think as opposed to my nature, I think I'm a little more impulsive in certain things. But Mike is generally a lot more deliberate. That's also one of the reasons why I want to work with him. But the other thing was, because it was COVID and because we knew that the world has fundamentally changed, and we had that opportunity to kind of just take a step back and rethink on what we really want to do. So that allowed us to actually have that conversation over a month, kind of really think through, what are we going to really do with this business, and how are we going to take this forward? And I think that was in hindsight a very good exercise that we ran. Because while of course every startup journey has its own ups and downs, the one thing that I don't think we've ever kind of had to question is, why are we doing this?
Okay. Yeah.
That's
nice. That's nice.
And that's actually, it's a big positive, like knowing that, okay, whatever happens in terms of like revenue, clients, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
At least the direction of the business is something that we know we resonate with, and we know that has always stayed true.
Yeah. That's nice. And I think it would be interesting to hear. So let's start with what is your purpose? What's your vision for the organization?
Yeah.
And then how did you get there? Like, did you have like sort of prototype visions where you're like, this is it, and then it changed, or was it like just one eureka moment? Like how did you get there?
Yeah. So I guess when we started the conversation on building a business together, again, like, credit to Mike, because he kept asking me, but what's the plan, right? What's the direction? What's going to happen? Where we plan to take this? And we decided to run this exercise called Ikigai.
Yeah.
And for those who may not be familiar with Ikigai, it's essentially a Japanese philosophy, I would say.
Yeah.
Right. And it looks at the combination of what you're good at, what you can get paid for, what the world needs, and
your passions.
Yeah, absolutely. And the intersection of that is essentially what your Ikigai is, your life's calling.
Yeah. So if you if you found your Ikigai, you never have to retire because you found your purpose in life, right? So you can apply that to your own personal situation, but also business.
Yeah.
So in the business context, it's essentially, okay, this is what I should be doing together with whoever I'm doing it with.
Yeah. And did you each do one and then bring them together, or
So actually, us two and our CTO, we all did it separately, and the interesting thing about that is the outcome is that we all have our own passions and we have our own skill sets, and obviously those differ somewhat, and how to make money with that is essentially maybe a little bit irrelevant in this case. But what was really interesting is that the what the world needs, like we were literally, we almost wrote down the same things.
Oh wow!
Right?
Okay.
So we all had this mindset of like, okay, what are to understand what the world needs, we need to understand what are the challenges that the world is facing right now. And the big challenges that the world is facing right now is essentially the environment, right? The climate crisis. Yeah. So essentially create an ecosystem that's sustainable and can allow us as humans to live for an indefinite amount of time. Social inequity, human exploitation, that kind of thing, and misinformation, quality of information, that kind of thing. Like you
all put those three things.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I mean, to a variation, but generally we were very aligned on those things, and this was also in the age of when Trump was still in power, and so misinformation was like also a huge kind of issue. So that was super interesting.
And when we look back at last year, 2020, we also see a lot of research that comes about that through the course of the year, I think a lot of people went through a transition where they chose to become more sustainable. And towards the second half of the year, you started seeing a lot of large companies, the Apples and Amazons of the world, make large declarations saying they're going to be carbon neutral by so and so date. And I think at some level, maybe we went through a mini version of that, ourselves, where I think both our backgrounds were more in the SaaS marketing space, the more conventional technology SaaS space. And I somehow just felt like this was the moment where I wanted to also change the course of my career. And have a much clearer purpose to it. Right. So and thankfully it was found people that aligned with that purpose.
So in the end, essentially the conclusion from that exercise was that we all had kind of this. We were aligned on what the world needs, and we looked at our skills and passions, and the skill sets were basically we all have a background in technology and SaaS and marketing. Hatim more on kind of the product side and kind of his own entrepreneurial journey. Our CTO obviously very technically, very techie and oriented, and myself more on the commercial side, partnerships, sales, acquisition, building communities, networks. And so the conclusion was essentially, okay, let's, put those technologies, SaaS, creating solutions that make life easier for people. And businesses. Let's use that to help the brands and businesses that are actually making a difference in the world, a positive difference in the world, right? So our ethical coffee brands and cocoa brands, our sustainable clothing brands, e-bike companies, etc. So that was kind of the basis of where this whole Treety journey started. We had a quick creative brainstorming session about the name of the company. It was called SoulSkill. We changed it to Treety.
Yeah.
And that's where it all kind of started.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you would say that it seemed like in your case that because you had the same what the world needs, the same kind of context, then that kind of helped you align on what the purpose.
Yeah. So I would say that the purpose comes from what the world needs.
Yeah.
And then the other aspects of Ikigai in terms of like what we're good at and what we can get paid for. That became more the operational side of almost. But so in terms of what the world needs, and I think what our vision is, just to kind of put it in a sentence, is we believe that we want to help create a world where every purchase or every economic action that happens is actually positive for the planet and the people on it, as opposed to what is often the case right now, where a lot of our economic activity is leading to a degradation of not just the biosphere, not just the planet, but also it's also leading to more exploitation in the value chain, let's say. So we want to kind of help with that transition where we believe that at some point in the future we should have an economic system where every brand and every business is actually creating more positive impact than negative impact, and that's what we want to help create with the help of Treety.
Okay. That's interesting. There's a couple of things that come up. One to just, I guess, to get your vision a bit clearer, because it's a really nice vision, I think. So it's sort of like the idea that at the moment, for many reasons, like each purchase quite often has a negative impact on the planet.
Yeah.
And then you see a world where each purpose is essentially, I guess it has to be like accounted for. So there has to be enough data and information where you can account for everything. And that you can see that the purchases that happen are not damaging the planet.
Absolutely. I think there's this idea of true cost accounting, right? Where not just the financial cost of something, but also the environmental impact or the social impact of everything that we buy.
Yeah.
And alongside that, we see more and more government action, more and more regulation coming in. Where there's more of a need for businesses to be conscious of the impact they create. The third angle is, of course, just from the consumer market, right? So people who purchase things, and I've seen this change in me also over the last few years, where I am much more careful now on what I purchase and why I purchase it.
Yeah.
Right. And for example, I've changed my diet as well, and I don't consume meat like I used to.
Yeah.
I try my best to reduce plastic, so on and so forth. So it's just this is even before Treety happened, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is just a natural change.
Yeah.
And that is also putting pressure on businesses.
Yeah.
And I think all of that put together is the concept of what Treety is kind of trying to address. So just to give like a definition of the business, what we help our customers do is help them measure, compare, share impact.
Yeah.
Right. So starting from helping them identify exactly what their impact is, how to measure it in the most effective ways, compare it to the right benchmarks, and then give you means to share it with either your customers or your investors or your employees or anybody else.
Yeah. Right. And to really quickly just touch back on what he was talking about before. So when we were going through this process of kind of looking at, okay, where do we want to go with this business and stuff like that, I ran into this quote, and it's always stuck with me, that essentially said, I think it was from someone's TED speech or something, which essentially said, every time you spend money, you're voting for the kind of world that you want. And that has kind of stuck with me ever since. Changing the world is not just like you as a consumer, you as a person. You don't, like, we all feel like we're kind of, generally people feel like they're kind of powerless, and like changing the world is like this big task. And, you've got your entrepreneurs out there that are trying to change the world, but in general, that's kind of the sentiment that people have, right? Like, what can I do as one person to actually make a difference? And generally, the feeling is, okay, I can vote once every 4 years for the new president or the new prime minister, and that's basically about it, and a couple of local things here and there. But the reality is that your wallet is your voting bill on a daily basis, right? Like every time you buy something, you're essentially saying, this is my vote for you to exist as a company. And it's obviously not as simple as that, because we all have needs and we all have limitations when it comes to financial capabilities and all that stuff. But as a concept, that really kind of hit home for me, and it actually made me change my mindset a lot about how I consume and what I buy, and kind of resonating with what Hatim was saying. Did change my habits as well. And essentially what we want to do is kind of also just generally change the way we market products by actually taking impact into consideration and helping brands measure that impact, exactly what Hatim just said. Measure that impact, compare it to something, and translate it to language that clarifies things for customers, that makes them understand what they're buying, what the impact of that is, whether it's a better or not or a worse buying decision, and essentially helping the customer vote for the world they want. The things they buy.
I like that quote, because I think framing it in terms of a vote really gives that sense.
It's empowering.
Of power. So it gives that sense of power for sure. I think it would be nice to hear like an example or two of like the kind of work you guys do to give more of a concrete sense of like how that comes into practice.
Sure.
If you have any.
Hatim is Hatim works with our customers, so he's probably the best person to.
So I mean, just in terms of the customers we have right now, we work with a couple of responsible coffee brands here in Amsterdam. So one of them is Moi Coffee, another one is Bakuli. Then we have an e-bike brand called Clever Mobility. There's a brand called Care Plus, and they make like anti-mosquito ointments, and their larger vision is to kind of eradicate malaria. We have a brand called Mr. Beaumont. They make sustainable swimwear from recycled materials. So with all of these businesses, I think typically how we start our engagement is we first look at what is their broader purpose, or what is their own theory of change as such. And based on that, we identify what are the key kind of metrics that represent the positive impact of this business. Right.
So what might they be?
For example, in Moi Coffee's case, it's the income that goes to the farmers. Right? And how that income is helping these farmers have a more sustainable livelihood in their local community. In the case of Clever Mobility, it's basically the carbon offset of riding an e-bike versus taking a more, let's say, dirty fuel vehicle, such as a normal car running on gasoline. So on and so forth. And essentially, once we have identified those metrics, we also put the benchmark. So for example, in Clever's case, it's what would be the CO2 footprint of riding a normal vehicle. In case of Mr. Beaumont, and they make swim shorts with recycled nylon. Over there, the comparative is a swim short made from just virgin nylon. So with each business, once we identify the metrics, we look at what's the comparative. and what are you trying to essentially improve on? What is the status quo that you're trying to kind of fight, let's say?
Yeah.
And once we have identified these two things, then we can essentially calculate the impact, not just of the business overall, but at the product level, potentially also at the customer level.
Yeah.
So if I've been buying coffee from Moe Coffee for the last 1 or 2 years, what is the total amount of my, purchase amount that has gone to the farmers in their community?
Nice.
Right? And those are kind of calculations that we can do.
And then that's something that the company could then share with their customers.
Yeah.
Is that, and then am I right in saying you also help present that information, so it might go out in an email or something like that?
Yeah. So we are the enablers, I would say.
Yeah.
So what we provide as part of our own software platform is the ability for any of these brands to manage these measures and to also share these measures either directly on their website as part of some basic widgets that we can also help them set up.
Yeah.
Or what happens very often is they kind of push it to other marketing software, such as their emailing software or their referral software or any other such tool, and then it can obviously be manipulated in any way they want.
Cool.
As part of that, because of course a lot of marketing, as you're well aware, it requires some amount of creative work.
Yeah.
Right, and we are a software company, so and obviously each brand wants to do it in their own language.
Yeah, of course.
So that's something that the business takes care of.
Yeah, cool. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So something that comes up for me, so in the Ikigai you also have what can I make money with?
Yeah.
So did you ever have a point where you're like, can we make money with this? Like, did that ever come up, or is there like to some? Because I think something that stops. This is my assumption, but something that stops companies from moving towards this more what does the world need is this like we won't be able to make any money, or it would become uncompetitive.
So I mean that I think that's more of a symptom of the kind of economic system that we've kind of been living in over the last decades, right? That essentially to be successful, you need to. It's purely focused on financial profit, financial gains, and generally, especially because impact, where it's been social and environmental kind of efforts, have the first thing I think of if I think of kind of the past is things like Greenpeace, WWF, UN, UNICEF, essentially NGOs and social enterprises that are funded by governments or donations or whatever, right? So the stigma around positive change, positive impact has always kind of, I get where the stigma comes from, but it's completely irrational, right? I mean, the real issue is that I think social enterprises impact, traditionally are purely impact focused, right? Whereas businesses traditionally are purely profit focused. And there's very few examples, at least from the past, that where companies have been able to combine those two, or actually made an effort to combine those two, and make that a success. But there's loads of cases out there, nonetheless, right, that have done that. And I mean, just to name one example, Patagonia, right, who have been around since I think the 70s. They're usually successful, and they've always had impact at their core, right? Whether it's durability, sustainability, using quality goods so that it lasts longer, etc. So, and the interesting thing is that I think the world is waking up to that, right? So you see more and more brands popping up that are essentially saying triple bottom line, right? It's people, planet, profit, and without people and planet, there's no business, right? They're equally important. Without profit, you can't run a business, right? You can't sustain yourself as a business, so you can't make impact.
Yeah.
But all those things have to be tied together.
Yeah.
And what we actually share as a best practice in this kind of measure, compare, share model is the very first thing you need to do is like define impact metrics that you can, at least preferably, that you can tie to the success of your company, right? To the financial success.
Yeah.
So if revenue grows, impact grows along with it. If impact grows, revenue grows along with it. Because without, and that's essentially the triple bottom line model, right?
So what might that look like with the metrics tied together? What's an example?
So for example, if you have to take Moi again as an example, right? If you've set up your business correctly, where Moi has set up their business in a way that essentially the more coffee they sell, the more farmers are getting a more equal, a more equal income. And they've got all kinds of other models where they're essentially planting coffee trees on the plantations of the farmers, so that the farmers have even more trees, where they're making even more income, so they can actually reinvest that money into expansion and things like that. So essentially, they've set it up in a way that the more successful Moi is, the more people are going to, more farmers are going to
get a sustainable
benefit, and the more value the more value stays behind in the country of origin as well. So they don't just pay the farmers better for the coffee by taking out a lot of middlemen and kind of having the relationship directly with the farmers, but they also train people in the country itself to roast the beans. So which usually actually happens in the country where it's sold, right? That's how coffee companies generally make money. They take the raw beans from over there, they're processed there, and then they take it to Europe or the US or whatever, generally Northern Hemisphere, to roast it and sell it at a premium. So, great example of a company that essentially has tied impact directly to revenue, directly to growth. Meaning, if Moi grows, everybody.
There's one thing I'd also like to add. This whole idea that when you have a purpose, it may be taking away from the profit. In fact, I feel it's the opposite, because now that we have a purpose, it actually allows us a clear space or a clear scope within which we can experiment on different business models. So in fact, it's a bit liberating, because now, and I've also experienced this firsthand with some of my previous businesses. When you don't have a very clearly defined purpose, you can get a little all over the place. And then this seems like a good opportunity, and this seems like a good opportunity, and kind of it's crazy. Versus when you start saying, no, but this is our purpose. We want to contribute to a better economic system, one which is good for the planet and the people on it. That automatically eliminates a lot of stuff,
That's true. It's an energy source, but it also has this sort of unifying thing where it's like you start to align everything underneath it.
Absolutely.
So it's like this is where we're going, and then definitely. And I think you said quite a few interesting things with the sort of purpose and profit thing. I think quite often, indeed, I think it's sort of thought of as an either or. And with triple bottom line, and also this sort of tying your impact metric to your profits. It's just kind of like it's a way of thinking that's including more. It's not like reducing to like one thing. And I think you need to start doing that, because I think what kind of often happens is like it's just that they are kind of, in a way, they can feel contradictory when you're dealing with both of those, because you do have to focus on profit, and then when you do that, it's very kind of cold and calculating. And then if you're more on the purpose side, when you start doing that, you're like, no, I don't. And then if you're more from the profit side, then you sort of like you take a step over to the purpose, and you're like, this is just airy fairy stuff. We need to, and so
because it doesn't feel genuine.
Thing.
It's like when you just have a profit focus. And if your business has only been like this old economy, conventional, shareholder value and profits. And then to suddenly tack in some purpose on top, it feels so so inauthentic. Like most people with basic integrity would shudder from it, and good that they're shuddering from it, because they shouldn't. If a purpose should be the other way around.
It's the other way around.
You should start from what is your purpose and then build a business on top.
Yeah, I have a sense, and I think that's something interesting to talk about then, because I have a sense that that process of, because indeed it really shouldn't be that you're like, oh, purpose is good, I'll go get one of those, and then
10 kilos of purpose.
And that's also like, because I've been writing a couple of articles about this, and then I've been sort of researching the blogs that appear, top of the list for purpose marketing and stuff like that. And it makes sense. They cover a section that says, why do purpose-driven marketing, and then it's always brands that do this succeed. But then people that read that will then go, oh, I need to get purpose to succeed. But that's completely the wrong way to do it, because it's not something, if it's genuine, it's not something that can be forced that way. It's something that you have to really care. So with you guys, you really care about this vision of a world where it's I wonder if you have any thoughts about that, about how you...
So that's actually where this measure, compare, share model comes from. And I was actually reading an article the other day about the kind of the development, the evolution of the role of a sustainability manager within a company. And the conclusion was essentially that we're still in a place where there's no clear definition or career path that you can follow towards becoming a sustainability manager, because a sustainability manager in one company could mean something completely different than another company. And what they were saying is essentially, if the sustainability manager, if you're talking to a company where the sustainability manager spends 80% of their time on or working with marketing, be wary, right? Because it should be that the sustainability manager in a truly impactful company, or at least a company that wants to transition to that kind of a true people, planet, profit, triple bottom line, that person should actually be talking to the supply chain managers, the operations managers, the production side of things, right? And yes, you also need to be communicating with marketing, because you need to communicate it properly, but it starts at the core of it.
Exactly.
Not at the fringe.
Exactly.
Right? It's not makeup. It's not supposed to be makeup. It's supposed to be,
exactly.
You need to change first and then talk about it.
I think so. And but how,
it's like sorry to interrupt you. It's like, it reminds me of 8 to 10 years ago when when actually it was quite a bit before that, maybe, when this whole startup entrepreneurship scene started trending, and everybody wanted to be an entrepreneur, blah blah blah. And you'd go to these events, like these drinks events, where everybody was an entrepreneur. There was also a time where everybody was a DJ, right? If you'd mixed a few songs at one party, you were a DJ. If you'd register a website, you were an entrepreneur. And that's kind of the same thing. Have you done the work and made the changes to actually be that, to have real impact? Or are you just talking about it and kind of putting a nice little green a bit of green makeup on it?
I would also say that I definitely agree with that, and then at the same time I would say not to completely throw out talking about it or communicating it alongside making efforts to
absolutely. That's our business model.
And not be afraid also to talk about it. I think even when you haven't got it all figured out. Because and I notice that with us, we're really like a work in progress.
Well, I'll let you in on a little secret. Like, nobody's got it exactly.
No, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Especially, there's probably certain environmentalists that are the closest to having figured it out. Right? What really needs to happen to kind of create that sustainable space. But we're all on a journey to figure it out.
Exactly.
Some people are figuring it out, and some people are doing what they've always done, and just communicating like they're
No, I think the key is authenticity, right?
Yeah.
Like, are you just honestly interested in this space?
Yeah.
And I think the key thing is that, you know, the economy, most businesses were going down this one path.
Yeah.
Right? Where they were prioritizing profits without caring for it. It was indifference, genuine indifference towards the planet, genuine indifference towards all their suppliers, you know, the people in that whole space. And they were going down this certain path. And as long as they have turned that wheel and are genuinely trying to go down a different path where they're balancing all these different things, right? Like balancing the impact on the environment, balancing the impact on the people that are part of this process. I feel then there's a legitimate case to share your story. To share, okay, this is our theory on the reason why we're going this way is we feel that eventually we'll get to a place where X, Y, Z. Right? And I think that is the real measure. If the business is genuinely going in that true direction, there's absolutely no reason why you can share all your successes, all your failures, and the best brands that we look at, you know, that have a purpose. One of the things that always stands out is they're very transparent and they're very honest about their own failures. And you know, in today's world where so many brands are just trying to greenwash and, you know, pretend like they're so you know, holier than thou. It's so refreshing to see brands talk about their mistakes, and actually I think it helps these brands build more credibility. Right. So it's just a question of authenticity, in my opinion.
I think so.
To bring an example from your home country, Scotland.
Please do.
Brewdog.
They're
a great example of this, right?
So
they make a lot of effort to, you know, constantly make less of an impact, be more sustainable, etc. They communicate about it, about what they're doing, but they also, the CEO himself, like, regularly posts things about the mistakes that he's made. Right?
That's great.
And the fact that they are not perfect and all this stuff. And there's loads of examples out there that do this really well.
I think that's great. And I think, I guess the impulse was just to maybe to encourage that, because I think that it can maybe stop people from making a change, because it feels sometimes that you have to be all or nothing, or you look at what you're doing and you're like, well, I mean, but I think also it's important to find, as you're making the changes, to find people that resonate with what you're talking about and where you're coming from, because that can give you the necessary support to keep going. Because I think it can often feel like if you do want to make a change, but then you're stuck in a place where all the communication is not about that. It's about, you know, making profit and, you know, then I
mean, how great is the feeling of like, oh, and I can drink a great IPA and I'm still, you know, and it's still okay. Those are good feelings.
But I think you've touched upon something very important, because I felt this maybe for myself before I think Mike and I started working on Treety together. Where I always connected with the idea of more impactful brands or you know, more purpose-driven businesses. But because I had already kind of gone further in the previous businesses, you know, and built something there, it felt a bit disingenuous to kind of suddenly stick some purpose on that, you know. And I think what helped me, and I'm sure it's different for different people, but what helped me was really questioning myself and coming to certain conclusions or answers on what do I truly believe in, and what do I truly believe the world needs. And that's why the Ikigai exercise was so crucial. And you know, it's the philosophy or the theory is at a place now where I mean, I really like what I'm doing with Treety, but even if Treety does not exist, you know, it's a theory. It's a theory of change. It's a direction that I feel very committed to personally. Right, and I think part of the reason why you have this inauthentic purpose being slapped on top stuff happening is because sometimes the core leadership team or the founding team or the owners of that business, sometimes they either are in the process of answering these things for themselves, so they're not picked those few things, or they've not given themselves the time to kind of truly answer it, you know. And
that's why I think the COVID situation, as horrible as it has been for a lot of people, was this kind of big wake-up moment. And the reason for that was because people you were seeing things happening, right? Like I think the first few things that were in the news was when the lockdowns had been going for a while. Was, holy shit, there's like 80% less pollution in the air. Holy shit, there's a town in India that's seen the Himalayas for the first time in I don't know how long. You can see fish in the water in Venice.
Yeah,
we haven't seen in Asia.
Yeah,
you know, that in combination with people just having, like, everything was just frozen for like a month.
Yeah.
At the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. Nobody knew what was happening. Everyone's sitting at home, like, kind of thinking about life and. Hey, am I really doing what I want to be doing?
Yeah.
Not everybody, but you know.
Yeah. I think that's.
You could really tell that this was
there's a breakdown
happening more than outside of our four walls.
Yeah. I think that seems like the important thing, because to get to this genuine sense of purpose, it seems like, you know, you're saying that you need time to slow down. And I think also with the COVID situation, it's almost like you need those just survival mechanisms to just stop running or whatever's driving you in the day to day, because it's just sort of like you're just going and getting things done. Right? You get off the treadmill, and then when those calm down a bit, then you get this other deeper thing coming up of like, what's it all about for me?
I agree.
And also, just coming to mind, like purpose in general. I mean, it doesn't have to be about the environment or about social change or whatever, right? Like, I mean, I think Japan is a great example of where you can really find. I mean, this Ikigai comes, the mindset comes from there, right? But like the amount of craft that you still see there, people that are just committed to their craft. And have, you know, essentially spend their entire life making noodles. And just perfecting it. You know, or making tofu or soy or whatever, or tea or woodwork or whatever. Like something that's swords exactly. Some and some kitchen knives. I mean, I'm a passionate cook. And had some chef jobs in the past. I mean, the best knives definitely come from there, famously, right?
Of course.
And I think that kind of purpose, just the concept of purpose in general, has been lost in this kind of Western neoliberal, very profit-focused
the
mindset.
purpose became profit.
So.
The purpose became profit, I think, you know.
In a lot of ways,
cases. And so everybody has this confusion, right? Like everybody has this confusion through their life on, okay, what is my goal and which direction am I going? And, you know, because there was this general consensus, especially after the early 90s, where political events took place. You know, there's this general consensus that this is the way to go, capitalism is the way to go, and what makes capitalism work? It's profit, so everybody profit, you know. That just became like this general consensus. And I saw that happen in India, because India used to be a very socialist country, and, you know, through somewhere in the 90s, it just became about profit.
To the point where essentially, and I recommend everybody to check this, Maria Mazzucato, I don't know if you've ever heard of her, she's an economist, her most recent book is essentially about reinventing the economy and rethinking about what is value creation. Right? So we've gotten so far into this rabbit hole of you know, profit is everything. That we've essentially, it's become the same thing. Like we've associated value creation with profit. With financial profit.
People measure value in money.
Which even even the original economists, and she talks about this, like even the original economists saw, for example, landlords and financial people that were doing the financial kind of accounting and things like that. Banks, the same. They were the sterile class. In other words, the non-productive class. And for the long, I mean the when it comes to like value creation, the financial industry and banking wasn't considered value creation until it wasn't even part of GDP until like somewhere in the 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
Right before that, it was just seen as just an exchange of value, moving value
There was
around.
no productivity associated.
But there was
with
no
like
productivity essentially.
Yeah.
So that only originated in like 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and it also, I think for me it's this movement towards value equals money is also it's a movement within yourself towards things being very mental, and so it's a calculation. And I almost think that there's also been a move of people more into their heads, and then you think about value into it's very conceptual and something that you calculate. But and it's the same thing with the purpose and your values. It's not the actual value of something. It's not something that you use your mind for. It's not a formula. It's something that you feel, and that needs more time and space.
Absolutely.
And it's more sort of grounded thing. And I think there's we're kind of caught in this really mental space at the moment, and
we're all trying to figure
we're a bit
it out.
Lost.
Because we've lost that connect, right? There's one interesting thing that most leading environmentalists, environmental scientists, activists, like also people in my family, for example, but not just them. When I go and I do like research on the planetary boundaries, and I look at scientists who work on that, a common theme that they all kind of talk about is, apart from you learning and educating yourself about what is impactful and not, part of what the solution is just reconnecting with nature. Just reconnecting with the planet. Because we've kind of gone into this zone where everything is concrete.
Or literally reconnecting with the system that we're essentially part of.
Exactly, right? And I think part of that is also
we've
just
even lost
reconnecting.
that.
No, we have, and I think part of that is also just reconnecting with yourself. Because you've kind of gone into this virtual world. Where everything is just some numbers, and our entire self-worth is defined by how much money we have in the bank. When did that happen?
Exactly.
And when we actually have some free time, not everybody, of course. Some people go to Vegas. When we actually have some free time, like generally, what do? Right? Like we go to camp. We go. We have a holiday on the beach. We go to the mountains and ski. We go look for fresh air, nature. Which apparently gives us a sense of freedom and happiness. So what are we doing?
Why are we spending 80% of our life away from all of those things and just chasing this?
Netflix.
Exactly.
And I think also to come back to something you said, that the purpose doesn't need to be this grand thing as well. It doesn't need to be sort of world centric. For some people that is. But it can be smaller or closer to home. It can be about your family, your loved ones. And that's or like you say, perfecting an art, perfecting a skill.
I think it's about getting to a place where you feel like your environment is thriving and you're thriving with it. And that's also a quote from David Attenborough from his latest documentary on Netflix. So not to plagiarize, but he said that the thing that nature teaches us is that any living being thrives when its environment thrives. It's always interconnected. And there are farming techniques where it's not so much about just getting the maximum yield out of this land, and I'm going to inject this chicken with all these antibiotics because I want more flesh yield or whatever. Versus just having the more permaculture approach to farming, and then it's about creating abundance, and then you can harvest that abundance. And then there's a very natural way of having a profit. As opposed to having just give me that profit.
And it's you can find that in so many places that we're generally drawn to that. I mean, if I'm looking for a house right? I look for, generally I'm much more happy in a neighborhood where there's some trees sticking out of the ground. If you look at to take California as an example, the richest people in California, they live in Beverly Hills, Malibu. These are all in San Francisco. They go live like on that island just across the bridge.
Yeah,
it's all nature.
Yeah,
right. Beverly Hills is super green. The hills of Malibu are super green. There's just houses surrounded by trees and nice lawns and gardens and all that stuff.
Yeah,
this is where people go when they have the means to do so.
Yeah,
right?
So
it's it's super interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Went off on a bit of a tangent there, but
no,
I think it's a good tangent.
This is something that this is what connects us, right? Like this is what brings us that sense of purpose and alignment. Because we care for this, and I think at a broad level, I do care for humanity, despite its flaws. I care for people. And it's nice to see happier people, and I think what happens is in a lot of, and you see this especially in like the most financially driven cities, Amsterdam, London, in Bombay where I'm from,
New York City.
Not been there, so I can't comment, but I imagine it's the same. It's like you find like these hyper finance people, right? Like really into this corporate scene, and on TV shows and stuff like that, they're characterized a certain way, so I'm not getting into that. But just my own personal experience with a lot of them is that, they might be making a lot of money, but deep inside, they're just so unhappy. And there's something fundamentally wrong if the people considered the most successful in our society have something so fundamentally misplaced in their own life. That shows the disconnect. That proves the disconnect. Versus when you can see these people like fishing in a farm, and the hippies and I'm again being very generalistic over here, but like the people in Bali living the digital nomad life, they may also be broke and may not have figured out a lot of stuff in life, but they definitely seem happier.
I think so.
The average person in Bali is definitely not broke right now.
But I think that's true. I think in modernizing, we lost a sense of natural happiness. For sure. There's a guy, Rob Smith, Integral guy that I like. He said that this current situation is like, it's never been better, never felt worse. So like, it's
that's spot on.
I think it's not like the technological advances that we've had from the way that we've modernized are amazing, because they do so many great things. Like,
absolutely.
But at the same time, we've lost a lot at the moment, and I think it's sort of like trying to get through to.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. Like you hear in kind of a lot of the activist corners that there's a lot of talk about we need to go back to some kind of I don't want to write off all activists. Activism is very important, but there is a certain group of people that is saying we need to go back to some time in the past where everything was better and we were more in touch with nature and all that stuff. Which, first of all, I think that's a farce, because I would please do not send me back to 100 years back when everyone was still fucking dying from measles and whatnot. And so, I mean, we've innovated to a place where indeed everything is better, but we're not necessarily happier. And I think we're waking up now to a point where we can innovate further, but towards a place where we're more in touch with nature, not even back to a place where we're more in touch with nature.
Exactly. I think the idea is to move forward.
Yesterday is gone. We can learn our lessons from yesterday, but we can move forward and we can innovate towards a place where things are just as good as they are now. But we're actually happy,
feeling good also.
I think so too.
And in a sustainable way.
I think so too, because I think
future generations.
I think it is a fact. I've heard there is a lot of that type of argument happening. I think. it is a kind of fallacy, because it wrongly assumes how perfect everything was before.
Yeah, and that's human
modernity.
nature, right? Like, back in the, it's like the classic kind of caricature of a grandfather. Like, back in my day, things were way better. The herring was twice as big and way more delicious, and I walked to school and I loved it. The youth of today.
Exactly. On purpose.
Yeah, I think like one of the reasons why I really enjoy the work that we are doing together with Treety is it brings me close to other businesses, other people, who are similarly kind of conscious of not just from a sustainability perspective of their own kind of environmental impact and social impact, things like that, but also conscious of a more holistic version of living. And a more holistic version of like making priorities in life. And I feel like there is a place where the comforts that we have can coexist with a more sustainable lifestyle. It's not about either or. I think part of the conflict you're talking about, like people sometimes feel like they have to sacrifice an existing business to almost have a purpose. And I feel that there's a much more natural way of making that transition. And the first thing, the most important thing to even start on that process is to have that belief that it is possible. So I think at least for me, the thing I want to kind of say at the end, let's say, is that I really believe that every person and every business can find this. It's not like it's not a niche. It's not like one sub-segment of the economy, or everybody can have a purpose that can coexist with the current economic system. That is actually what's going to lead to the evolution of this economic system. So, just keep the faith and look deep inside you, and you will find it.
Very wise words.
I would take that. Like, I would even put a cherry on top of that and say that there's a cherry on top of the purpose pie.
Go ahead.
But in all seriousness, that there's new and better comforts on the horizon. Like if we take it back to that conversation about what we look for when we have that free time and all that stuff. Like let's innovate towards those new and better comforts. We might have to sacrifice some things, but I think a lot of those things aren't even things that necessarily make us sustainably happy. So that's my main takeaway. And just in general, since I've kind of started on, since we decided to start Treety, and we've been working with these impact focused brands, and we've found our kind of purpose. And every day it's a challenge and it's hard and all that general startup roller coaster stuff. But it's been a pleasure every day. And just talking to these entrepreneurs and people that are working for these impact focused businesses, or people that are inside other businesses trying to make a change. Like it's so refreshing. I'm learning every day. It's made me a better person. I want to say it's made me a more conscious consumer, first of all, right? So not to stick a feather in my own butt, but like I haven't bought a piece of clothing, in now over a year. And that's not because like I'm starving myself of new clothes or I'm trying to like be this perfectionist or whatever. But every time since we started this, and pretty early on, we were talking to this company called Hack Your Closet, which kind of makes packages. It's a subscription to new clothing pieces that have been used before. Every month you get a new box of clothing. And I learned a lot there about like the impact of new clothing production and fast fashion and all that stuff. And now every time that I think about buying a new piece of clothing, I just think about it, right? Like I think about it first before I actually go and get that piece of clothing. And apparently I haven't really needed that new piece of clothing in the last year, right? So it's just kind of even just interacting with these brands and reading up on all this stuff, it just makes you a more conscious kind of person. And it's made me it's definitely made me a better one in the process.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
I just suggest everyone to at least check out some brands and check out what they're doing to make a difference and kind of educate yourself and without any pressure. You know?
Just you don't have to get it right.
Baby steps.
Just have to go in with an open mind, explore, and you never know what you find.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way to approach it for sure.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool. Okay. Well, this has been a great conversation.
Absolutely.
Really enjoyed it. So thank you for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we're probably going to do another one sometime in the near future as well.
Would love
awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Found it.